Alright guys, today we're going to talk about a series that is near and dear to my heart, and that is the Dragon Quest series. A slime draws near. Dragon Quest was the first RPG I ever played. It set me off into this world of fantastic monsters, and it was the first game where I really felt like I had a huge world to explore, which is ridiculous when you think about it, because if you go back and play Dragon Warrior 1, the world is not that big, but at the time, back in the late 80s, it felt like a massive, massive game. This right here is the cartridge that I first purchased at a yard sale. I watched my friend, this is actually my friend's cartridge that he played that I first saw this game played on. I would watch him, and, you know, when you first see an RPG, you're not exactly sure how you're supposed to play it, and, you know, you'd always call, oh, I get next game when you die. Well, he's like, this game doesn't work that way. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, it's the same, it's hard to describe, little kid, because I was like, I don't know, maybe 6 at the time, and then he beat it, and sold it at a yard sale. I picked this thing up because I watched him play it and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And when I got this home, I sat and played it just for hours. This is a fantastic game, ridiculously simple by today's standards, but this will always hold a special place in my heart because it was my first RPG ever. And it really set me on this, well, it's almost a sickness if you really think about it, playing RPGs, because these things can take up to 40 hours. This one doesn't. But it can take up to 40 hours, and there's a lot of games out there that you could be playing instead of playing these, but God, I love RPGs. So, to continue my sort of Dragon Warrior collection, I also got Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 on the Game Boy. Now, these were based off of the Super Nintendo remakes, so you're going to have a lot of, you know, you can go around collecting these little nuts that increase your stats. I have beat this game, and I've beat Dragon Warrior 1 on this one. I have not beat Dragon Warrior 2 on this one, and I'll talk to you about Dragon Warrior 2 here in a minute. But these are, you know, these Game Boy games might be hard to find, I don't know, but these are fantastic ports if you want to play these old games on the go, because they have yet to release the original 4 Nintendo games on a portable system other than the Game Boy. I really like this black cart too. I thought that looked really cool back in the day when I got it. So next we have Dragon Warrior 2. Now back in the day, I had Dragon Warrior 1, and then I got Dragon Warrior 4 a little bit later. I did not have 2 and 3. I watched my friend play 3. Well, I'll talk about that when we get there. But I had to buy these off of, I think, Funcoland. They had those ads in the magazines. I bought this and 3 off of Funcoland for 40 bucks a piece back in the day, just the loose carts. So these were really expensive back in the day. I don't know what they're at now. But I don't like this one as much. It feels, this is where they first introduced a party into the game, and it feels like it's not very balanced for a 3-person party, because basically your other 2 members in this are kind of useless. Like, you have PETA here, who's basically a cleric, I believe. No. She's a wizard. She has really low HP stats, really weak strikes, but her magic is pretty solid. And then you have the Prince of Charlock, which I can't remember his name. Or is it Canik? I can't remember. It's been a while since I played this. But he is actually the most worthless one, I think, because his strikes are kind of weak, his HP is kind of weak, and his spells are weak. He's basically the healer of the party, but he doesn't really do a good job at that either. So, so, you know, back in the day with these 3 people, which your main character could only attack, he didn't have any spells, you would often fight, like, groups of monsters of, like, 5 monsters, and the monsters in this game are no slouch. They will tear you up. So it just feels a bit unbalanced. I finally beat it not too long ago. It took me a really long time to beat this one because, like, up on the plateau of Rhone, it's just, the monsters are just ridiculous up there, and they kept casting beat on me and just killing my party, so I'd have to travel all the way back to the save point to get healed up, and I finally beat it though. That's all that matters. And then comes my favorite, which is Dragon Quest 3 or Dragon Warrior 3 here. This is where the series just got fantastic. 4-person party. You got to select who was in your party from the get-go. So basically, this is the first version of the Dragon Quest job system. Because back in the day, I just picked, you know, I'd pick my hero, and then I have a warrior, a priest, and a wizard. And I would play those clear throughout until I got the sage book, and I'd turn my priest into a sage. Well, I think, and I have to go back and try this, but I think you can switch them around and have them learn different skills like you can in the modern games. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, going back and playing this again with sort of 2020 vision on how it really should be played. But this was fantastic. You played through this massive world with this massive party, and it felt balanced. And then you get to the end and you fight Baramos, only to realize there is another enemy to beat. Now, Dragon Warrior 2 did that as well with Hargon and Malroth. But this one was special because you actually transported back in time. Well, not really back in time, because this takes place in the past. You don't find that out until the end. But you travel to Alfgard, the world from the first game. And essentially, you're playing as Erdrick, who in the first game was the legendary hero that you were sort of following in his footsteps. I thought that was fantastic. Fantastic twist back in the day. I mean, most Nintendo games weren't doing things like that. And then I also got the Dragon Warrior 3 Game Boy Color cartridge, which I really like these Game Boy Color cartridges where you can see the chips through them. I think that's cool, and the battery. This is also based on the Super Nintendo cart. I'll talk about that in a minute. So again, you'll have like things like the seeds and to boost your stats and whatever extra stuff was added to the Super Nintendo version. Now, this is amazing, and it's so sad that we did not get this in America. This is a Super Nintendo remake of the third game using Dragon Quest VI's engine. Just fantastic graphics. I'm actually getting ready to play through this in the Japanese, so we're going to see how that goes. It's hard to play these RPGs in Japanese. But since I know this game extremely well, I figured this would be a great game to sort of start me off in playing Japanese role-playing games in the original language. I don't know Japanese. I have some guides around here to help me, but I'm going to be missing out on the stories, but I'll at least be able to figure out what's attack and magic and all that stuff. So I can't wait to see all the twists and turns of this game in the Super Nintendo graphics. And then to round out the Nintendo era of Dragon Quest, we have Dragon Warrior 4. This is also an extremely fantastic game. You can actually get this nowadays on the DS, which I highly recommend you find a copy of that. My wife is sweeping upstairs, so I don't know if that'll pick up on the microphone or not, but it probably will. So anyway, Dragon Warrior 4 had a huge party, and it actually had a very interesting way of playing through the game, which is the game is divided up into 5 chapters, and in each chapter you play a certain member of your party. Now, the interesting thing about this is the first chapter you play as a lone soldier, as a lone character, kind of like Dragon Warrior 1. Chapter 2, you play as a party of 3 people, with the first person being a fighter, the second person being a cleric, and the third person being a wizard, just like Dragon Warrior 2. The things get a little tricky in the third part, where you play as a merchant who's trying to open up a business in the castle town of Endor. Star Wars reference? I don't know. Who knows? And then the fourth chapter, you play as a pair of sisters that are fighting for revenge for their dead father. And then in chapter 5, all those characters come together and you meet the hero of the game, and you go off and slay the big bad monster, only to realize that the big bad monster has another monster behind him, because that is kind of the motif of Dragon Quest. You fight through this whole game and get to the end boss, and then you realize there's an even bigger end boss behind him that you never heard of before. But this is pretty fantastic, and really was released in the dying days of the Nintendo. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people got a hold of it back in the day, but I got a hold of it, and I had the box for the longest time, and sadly, during one of the moves, it got thrown away. I think I was like in my teens at the time, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm not going to need these boxes," and I threw it away because I was young and dumb. So that's my sad, sad tale. And then, like I said, you got Dragon Quest IV on the DS, which this uses kind of a variation of the Dragon Warrior 7 engine, I think. I mean, it looks like Dragon Warrior 7. It looks better than Dragon Warrior 7, but still, it looks like Dragon Warrior 7. A fantastic port of the game. There's really nothing else I can say about it other than, it's a fantastic port, easy for you guys to get a hold of if you want to play these Dragon Quest games. Thank God for the DS allowing people to play games that never came out in this country. I'm not sure what my time limit is on here, but I think I'm going to cut the video off here with Dragon Quest IV, and we're going to make it a two-parter because I need to get a stopwatch so I can watch how much time I have. But that covers the NES quadrology. I didn't say that right. The 4 games on the NES and their various ports. I can't think if there's any other ports out there of these other than the ones I've shown you. There probably are, though. So yeah, go ahead and check these games out if you want to, see some old school action, and I will see you in part 2 where we talk about the remaining 5 games in the series. Yeah. All right, guys. It's still recording.